Still working on the Facebook Live, so we'll get started in just a minute.
Oh, it says it popped up here. That's cool.
Yeah, I thought it did.
Mm-hmm.
Are we live on there?
Yeah.
Okay.
I see you.
Okay. All right, so I've got my speaker off for Facebook Live. That's really weird because there's a 20-second lag on it. So you're like, didn't I just make that expression like 20 seconds ago?
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll get started here in just a couple minutes while people are joining. So Liz, do you see where you can admit people?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So you can go ahead and keep doing that.
Absolutely.
And we'll give people just another minute or two to log in and get set up before we get rolling with everything. Oh, I see the thing that says we are live on Facebook. That was almost too easy. All right. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started because I'm going to take a few minutes to just kind of talk about what we're doing here, and then we can start off with our artists. So welcome everybody to our May 2020 second virtual, well, it is our second virtual second Saturday. And so we're here this evening to imitate our live second Saturday that we have every month. And since our closure in March, we wanted to keep doing this, having our artists featured and enabling our community to engage with them. So we had the idea last month to do it virtually and it went really well. And so here we are again. And so just to give you a little bit of information in case you're not familiar with the Workhouse or our second Saturday, the Workhouse is an innovative collaboration of visual arts, performing arts, education, community events and engagement, history, and personal enrichment. And so we do all of that through these different programs, including our second Saturday, our galleries, the resident artists. We have our Lucy Burns Museum and other things that happen on our campus. And our second Saturday typically is a live cross-campus event where our buildings are open later into the evening. So it's 6 to, I think, 8 p.m. typically. And the buildings, the artists are in their studios, so people, the general public, can go through the buildings, meet the artists. There's demos sometimes, and each building has a gallery in the front of the actual building, where the featured artists have their monthly show or their works up, and there might be other regular artist works up as well. And so the idea is that the community can come in, meet the artists, see all the artwork, and then sometimes on campus we have other things happening, like maybe there's a drum circle in the summertime. Sometimes there might be performances after second Saturday. So there's a lot of other things going on across campus. There's usually artist talks and receptions. So it's a fun monthly event to get folks out to the Workhouse and meet our artists, because we have over 70 resident artists. Some of them are teachers as well that teach our visual arts classes. Some of the artists are just there as residents. And as well, we have an Arches gallery where they aren't resident artists, but these artists display their works in the Arches gallery on a regular basis. And so that's it in a nutshell. And so tonight we have, we have 6 artists. Well, we have 5 artists, and then we have a group show. And so if you're wondering how a group show is done virtually, you guys are going to see. And we also have a special surprise about halfway through, and you'll see what that is when we get to it. So anyway, we've got two glass artists this evening. We've got a painter, we've got a fiber artist, and then we have some ceramic artists. So we're gonna go ahead and get started with our first artist, Sheryl Paisley, who is a glass artist.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, I'm Sheryl Paisley, and I'm in Building 7. I was scheduled to be the featured artist in Building 7 for the month of May. So I chose the theme of color theory and color sense. So I've been running all kinds of tests. I feel a little bit like a scientist, with some tests failing and other tests running just fine. I have a natural sense of color, and designing glass beads and jewelry, but I decided to challenge myself and see what I could learn about the color wheel and the technical terms that it uses. And some words I've never heard of, like triad and tetrary, and is just like, I've learned so much. So this first picture is, of course, the store that we have in Building 7. It's the glass store. And just to put a plug in here, the glass store sells fused glass, stained glass, all the kinds of tools that you might need for those projects, as well as borosilicate and glass rods. And these are the glass rods that I use. But the thing is, there are twice as many. This is only half of what we have. But artists and students and the public are welcome to come in and buy glass for the projects that they want to work on at home or in their studios or in class. So the thing I want to emphasize, though, is it was like a science experiment, because as many of you know who do this, some glass rods do not want to mix, or they don't want to be layered on top one another. It's because their composition is different. So that's why it was like a scientific experiment. And some of them were awful, and I took notes so that I wouldn't do that again. But this first example on the color wheel is a triad, and it's using 3 colors. That's where the first part comes. The tri means 3. And they're evenly spaced around. If you count from green, and yes, use that, see where the cursor is, use that triangle in the middle of the circle, and you can see, well, we're coming back to that triangle later, but these are just 3 colors that are equally spaced from each other. So if you start with the green and you count 4 spaces over, you come to the violet. And from the violet, you count 4 spaces over and you come to the orange. 4 more spaces, you're back at the green. So it's just evenly spaced colors of 3. So here I'm showing you a lavender bead that I made. And if you look at the first rod, it's a lavender, and the rod right above that is a dichroic glass. And unfortunately, the orange color is not showing up there. In the triangle tray is frit, which I call little rocks of glass. And the blue one is a reactive glass that when you turn up the propane and down with the oxygen on your torch, it will turn into this beautiful silvery green that I just love. So I made the lentil bead out of the purple because that's the dominant color in my scheme here. And while it was hot, I would dip it in the little rocks of glass, and some of them I would melt in, and others I left raised just to give it some texture. And the orange that you see, the dichro glass on the bead, that's the dichroic. And that was just an accent, as well as the little marinis there that you see at the end of the class. They're really orange with a green middle. And so some of the beads have that orange in them. And the green, of course, is the supporting color. So even the bracelet is made of violet leather. And this is just showing you a close-up of it. I do decorate the backs of the lentil even, but I always put the one that I like best on top when I'm designing a bracelet. Oops. Now the next photo is showing.
Trying to get there, hold on.
All right, no hurry. See how that green is so luscious? Anyway, this is just a necklace I made with the lavender and the green. I didn't put any orange in this, I just love the two colors together. The next series is split complementary, and this is where we're going to use that white triangle in the middle. If you take red and go directly across to get the complementary of green. But since it's split, you go off the side of that green and you get a yellow green and a turquoise green. So going on, this is an example of, again, the predominant color here in this scheme is turquoise. The accent is the red and the supporting color is green. Now this is just a close-up of a necklace that I made, and in the middle you can see there's a large focal bead, but every bead on this necklace is, I just tried to make it all different just to show what I could do with those three colors. Next is the leather. I chose here my own color sense, and I did use orange with the turquoise leather. And if you go to the middle of the necklace, there's a rectangular bead, and then from that, it goes on to two disc beads. And then on each side, you just keep going up and you can see the pattern. And it ends with the two disc beads on top. Now this one is interesting because it's really two sets of complementaries. It's called a tetrad. So you start with the green on the corner of that rectangle and go diagonally across, and you get the complementary color of red. And now for the yellow, the other corner of the tetrad, if you go diagonally straight across, you get the violet. So that's two sets of complementary colors. You can use any combination. So these are just the four rods that I'm showing, and the design here is a sterling silver necklace. And on the far left side, you can see I've used just a yellow disc, plain, and a plain red, and a plain green, and lavender. I have to say though, I cheated a little bit here. I didn't use the dark green that was directly across from the red. I chose to use the lime green just because I thought it was, well, it made more color sense to me. And then the other beads are all black. I thought black would make a great base bead for these colors to be more dynamic on. In fact, I have that necklace on. Now, the last one I'm going to show you are for analogous colors. This is the easy one. It's any group of colors that are next to each other or adjacent. So I chose, you can do from anywhere from 2 to 5 colors. I just did 4. So green, blue, and blue violet. I chose to use this photo because I wanted to show you what I go through before I actually get a jewelry piece made. The first one shows the black and white beads with one dot of each of those colors, of the analogous colors. And that's just on jewelry wire. Then I tried enamel green wire, and I came up with another series of just the ball, the black and white with the 4 colors on it. And then I used this beautiful green teal transparency and put one of those analogous colors in between it. And the last one I tried was white leather, using the stripe beads, 2 of those, and then putting this teal green transparent with a little tail on it as a spacer. Now this is the white necklace I did with the white leather. And again, it's the pattern of 2 of the stripe beads and the little curly teal beads. And then I wanted to emphasize that I was working on those 4 analogous colors. So I made a disc and put those together in a group. And I repeated that pattern all the way around the necklace. And this is the bracelet I made. I chose to use the green enameled wire here. It's just fun to work with. And I came up with a similar pattern of 1 stripe bead, 2 of the teal just disc and then one of the analogous colors in each of those. So it's turquoise and then it's the French blue, and that last one's supposed to be the violet in between the two beads, disc beads. So then, and this just shows you what the beads look like when they come out of the kiln. And it's the disc beads and the stripe beads. And the movie that you're going to see is all about the striped beads.
So Cheryl, before we show the video, have you ever pulled like two colors and then you start to do your thing with it and then it just gets muddy, like paint can get muddy that way? Or do the colors just don't stand out well with each other?
You know, with paint, that's the great thing about paint. To get those colors on the color wheel, you can just take the red and the blue and mix it and get purple.
Mm-hmm.
But generally, we're lucky because the glass will stay its color and not mix up like that.
Okay.
Unless you really, you know, screw around with it or mess it up. And so, yes, but it's sometimes they just don't work and they come out, when you get the bead out of the kiln the next day, it turns out that the colors were just too dark. And so the other colors didn't show up and things like that. I kept very thorough notes, and I had my glass rods in little tubes. I felt like a scientist with tubes, my test tubes of glass.
Okay, well now we will watch a demo video of Cheryl creating a bead. And here we go with that.
Okay, so I'm using a black rod here as for the base bead. And my torch is fueled with propane and oxygen combined. And now I'm going to take this hot glass, and you can see how hot it's getting. It's red, but it will go back to black after it cools. That little mandrel there, it's not really so long, little, but it's covered with a bead release so that the glass won't stick to the steel. And so now you can see how stretchy that glass is. It's almost like a liquid, but not quite. And I'm turning the mandrel around and holding the glass in one position. Now I'm just heating it up to smooth it out and get it to form an equal disc. The next step is I pulled a white stringer, and I'm going to use that white stringer to put dots on this bead. And the thing that when making a bead, you want to control the heat, you want to control the volume of glass, and you want to control gravity. So I will put several layers of these dots on to increase the volume. I want to be sure those dots will melt down over the black and make the stripes. Here, I'm trying to space them equally. I put two on opposite each other, and now I'm going in between them and adding the third and fourth dot. So if, there you go, you'll see the 4 dots here in a minute. But I might add even more glass because, as I said, I want them to run down. And I keep that bead below the heat here, and I'm just pushing down on the white and then lifting it up and cutting it off in the flame. Now I'm going to start adding the more volume because I want to put on some clear glass. And my technique might be a little bit different than others who make this bead. I like to take the clear glass and put it directly on that dot of white. To me, this makes it smoother. You'll see how smooth it gets, but a lot of times people will just take a big blob of clear and go all the way around it. I feel like I have better control when I do it this way. Now I'm putting that glass in between the dots, right down on the black. And you'll see how bumpy this is in just a few minutes. But to me, this is the magical part. I love how that clear glass just magnifies that. There it is. It's all bumpy now, but watch what happens. I keep it below the flame and I'm just trying to melt the clear glass. And I'm turning it because I don't want gravity to pull that liquid glass down and make it bulge out of shape. Now look at that, that's almost perfect shape. The black isn't turned red because it's so hot still, but it's cooling down just gradually. Now I put it back into the flame and I really want that bead to go into a ball. And you'll notice here, because it is into a ball, it's gone down, the white is all the way to the edge of that bead. Now I'm going to take a stringer of turquoise, that analogous color, and I'm just going to put it dot down and then cut it off in the flame and melt it down just a bit. Next is going to be the petroleum green. And here, again, I push it down, I pull it off, but watch what happens. It gets a little bit long, it's a little bit droopy, but luckily the flame caught it and made it go back up into a ball. I also will use the French blue glass. Same thing, and you might notice that I'm putting them in different places. Some of those dots I put out far up high on one end, and the others I put down low at the other end of the bead, and some I just put in the middle. I'm just trying to make them a little bit different. Now, the important thing here is to get those dots melted in without changing the bead shape and without letting gravity pull that glass down. And so I have to be careful here. Now you see how it's sort of bumpy. And I had some beads that came out really poorly because I didn't get them to melt down evenly into the clear glass on top. So I'll keep heating those dots up until I get them down smooth. And this is the end result. Since these just came out of the kiln, they're all cool now and I can put them in water, clean off the bead release and pull them off that steel mandrel and then clean up the bead inside. Now they're ready for jewelry.
Awesome. And so you mentioned using a kiln. And so like my experience with a kiln is with ceramics and firing clay. And then after you glaze, you fire it again. So what is the purpose of the kiln with the glass?
Yeah, my torch is about 1,000 to 1,500 degrees. So that glass is pretty warm when it goes in there. But we have to put it into a kiln, which is set at 950. And so we're turning that glass continually as we go over to the kiln and pop that bead in there at 950. If I didn't do that, the glass would cool down too quickly and crack, and it just wouldn't be a good quality bead. This is called annealing when you put it in a kiln like that. So that kiln is programmed to go down, say, hour by hour. It gets less and less heat. So by morning when I come in there, I can take the beads out and they're at room temperature. They're just fine. Gotcha. And they're a lot stronger.
Okay, and you leave them on the stick thing. What is that called again?
It's called the mandrel. Yeah.
The mandrel. So you leave them on the mandrel, put them in the kiln, and then when you take them out, they slide off pretty easily.
Sometimes I have to kind of hammer them. Okay. Sometimes the bead release might break and you don't realize it, and so you pull on that and it just won't come off. Yeah, sometimes it can be tough, but most of the time they just slide right off after soaking in water.
Gotcha. Okay. Liz, are there any questions for Cheryl in the chat or on Facebook?
Right now, no questions, although Melanie in the Facebook chat says that she teaches cosmetology and that they use that color wheel to create hair color, which I thought is interesting.
That is interesting. Awesome.
That is.
So Cheryl, tell everybody how they can find you.
Oh, I'm in building 7 and my studio is 705. And I do have, contact through Gmail. It's sherrybeads4@gmail.com.
Gotcha. And we're after, and I just realized I'm not recording this. So I should go back and start the recording, which I will do. Cheryl, I apologize for missing you on that, but we do have your video and I'll put captions on it and include that. But I'm going to put on Facebook and the website that we have set up for this. So let me come back here. Let me get off of this screen and then go ahead and hit record. There we go. Okay, something told me I was forgetting something and that was it. So like I was just saying, we have a website page set up for this, which we'll put in the Facebook, we'll put it on Instagram. It'll also be in our e-newsletter that will have the recording from here on out. But Cheryl, I've got your video. I'll get with you on captioning it so that people can still see what, or still hear what you were talking about in that demo. And then of course, I've got your color theory information. So thank you so much for sharing all of that with us.
You're welcome.
Okay, next up we have Candi Durusu, who's also a glass artist, but her work is just a little bit different than Cheryl's. So let me get to the screen. And is Candi on here? Maybe she's not here. Liz, can you see if Candi is actually on there?
Hear me?
There she is. Okay. Okay.
Let's see.
All right. So we have a quick video of Candi. Well, first, Candi, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what building you're in?
Okay, well, Cheryl and I are studio mates, so you can find me at the same place you can find Cheryl at 705 in building 7. And we pretty much started around the same time. I have taken off in a slightly different direction, but I work with borosilicate glass, which is commonly called Pyrex. It allows me to sculpt a little bit more and go just slightly larger.
Okay.
So the video that you're going to see I was supposed to be the featured artist in March and got my display up. And then we knew we were starting to shut things down, and Sandy Martina helped me do this video. We weren't quite sure who the audience would be, so it's going to be kind of a brief one. We thought attention spans would be 30 seconds. So.
It's all good. And then we've got some images that you can actually like, that we can talk about. So,
yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Well, I will leave this on actually.
I am a glass artist at the Workhouse Art Center, W7. My name is Candi Durusu, and this month I'm featured artist. My theme is arboreal fantasies. My first sculpture is more representational. Owl be snagged. I've constructed some necklaces to go along with the theme, even a few owl heads on a necklace. This one is a Hawaiian lake. We come to my more surreal representations: the flame tree, balloon tree, and the cheerful balloon necklaces, rain tree, and a cloud tree necklace.
Great. Okay.
So speaking about the video a bit, I'm always appreciating feedback because I've been watching during isolation. I've been watching different video feeds and trying to learn a little more about that technique. That's not what I'm about as an artist, but I would appreciate feedback, whether more or less, what's good,
Yeah, we all had to pivot so quickly to be able to keep putting our offerings out there, and it's definitely been a learning curve for everybody involved. And I think that's probably true for even outside of the workhouse. Just everybody out there is suddenly doing Zoom and suddenly doing videos, and so you're definitely not alone there, Candi.
Yeah, it's been kind of an intense focus of my study right in the last couple of months. So
anyways, go ahead and tell us about these pieces. Tell us first about the theme that you had, and then how these play into that.
Well, my I kind of feel my big reach, I guess maybe my grasp isn't there, but my reach is installation art. So I work a lot like Cheryl does in that the torch is similar. I use a little bit larger flame. I probably double the size of the flame and everything because the The glass I use has a higher melting point. I don't use mandrels like Cheryl. I use, what it is a very, it's scientific glass basically. And it's, instead of the mandrel, it's a tube. And I decorate, put the colors around a tube, and then I blow. So you can, if you look, all my glass pieces are in a hollow shape. And it progressively is going to allow me, as I get more skills and get and improve, I'm going to get larger. I don't know how large I'll get, but as I improve, I want to get larger. So each time I am featured artist, I'm trying to install something that can represent larger pieces. But my bread and butter are beads that are featured beads, like this necklace you see on the left, which is a cloud with a raindrop on it. So I try to get a little bit abstract or a little bit surreal in my pieces. The material it hangs from, and this is what I consistently use for my necklaces, is woven copper, and it has an enamel for the coloring. That is basically my bread and butter gallery piece that I sell, or those necklaces with different beads on them. Then next to it, to the right, my owls, I've done a few commissions of birds. And so those owls are, I titled them I'll Be Snagged. They're hollow birds sitting on snags. And that's as representational as I get when I make the birds. I enjoy making birds. They're kind of fun. But they're cartoonish. Glass, when you start sculpting in glass, they tend to make you, glass rounds, and you have to sort of think in cartoonish forms, I think. For me, I do.
And so are the owls, like, did you do that as one piece, and then the
Yes.
tree part, that was another piece, and then you put them together?
Yes, and unlike Cheryl, and this has to do with the glass I'm working with, the color palette in this glass, because it's scientific glass, it doesn't take to chemical additives as easily. So as they started adding chemicals to make color, the results are inconsistent and kind of difficult. So surprisingly, you see a little bit of variation in the colors, the snag, the tree trunk itself, and then the owls, but really it's all pretty much the same color. Okay. It just has to do with how thin or thick it's been applied. And I mean, I've added white and some blue for the eyes and things like that, but it's how thin and thick it's been applied, and how it's been fired in the kiln, and different things that causes a variation in color, which is an interesting study and kind of fun, as like a scientific experiment, like Cheryl went through in her color study. But it's different with the glass I work with.
Gotcha. Okay.
And there, yes, I just on a whim decided to add the heads of those birds that I was making to a necklace, little balloons, just different themes on the same necklace variation. And these are long necklaces that would go over like a cowl neck or something. They're very statement jewelry oriented pieces.
And so the glass, I mean, these little bubbles, they
Yes,
look, they're very
hollow,
delicate and light.
They actually are not, because
okay.
When you work in hollow, you have two surfaces. You have the outside surface and the inside surface, and it's the surface of the glass that's actually very strong if it's done correctly. It's the skin of the glass that makes it strong, and it's actually in form it should be strong. So
okay.
when yes, and that's my balloon tree. So yes, the the theme of the display, the theme of the month was just kind of came to me in a dream. So I was trying to think of surreal combinations of trees and how trees would come about. And that was, to me, it looks like an upside down clown. And then the flame tree was, and I noticed you didn't get I'm not sure if you'll show the cloud tree as well, but flame tree and cloud tree are actually one and the same. It's a tropical tree, but when it blooms, it's called flame tree. So, rain tree and flame tree are one and the same tree. And I was trying to do different versions of that tree. So this is one of them. And
I wasn't able to get the cloud tree, a clear picture of it from the video. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that was the last tree on it. Then we saw that on the video. And so anyways, it was just a study of the same tree, which is a Malaysian tree. And yeah, if you're going to do a feature and be an installation, you want to study it in several different angles. And that was one idea, just to be a flame tree.
And so out of curiosity, how big is this piece?
It's about 12 inches,
Okay.
10, 12 inches high.
Okay, great. Well, Cheryl, or I'm sorry, Candi, tell everybody how they can find you again.
Oh yeah, I'm at W7 at the Workhouse Art Center, room 703. I'm also starting to, I just launched or just put my website online. It's candiart.org. So, and that just went up this month. So
we'll be sure to have that on the webpage as well. Liz, any questions in chat for Candi?
We do have a question. We have a question from Phoebe. She'd like to know, do you weave the necklace mesh chains as well?
I have woven it, and it's very pliable. It's very fun to work with. I've also done like keychains and different things. Yes, it's a very fun material. I have different colors, and if somebody would like, maybe something specialty made, I can work with them on that.
Awesome. Well, Candi, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, next up, we have Phoebe Peterson, who is a painter, and I think I saw on her bio page on the website, a sometimes collage artist. So Phoebe, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Let's see, we'll come off of here.
Hi, I'm Phoebe Peterson, and I'm an artist in Building 5. I've been at the Workhouse for about 4.5 years. I miss all of my friends at the Workhouse. We have so much fun there, and I hope we will open back up sooner rather than later, and that everyone will come and visit us when we do. I was also supposed to have a show this month, but of course that's not happening. So my original idea for the show was to do a tribute to summer, because I absolutely love summer. For me, summer is about spending time with family, maybe being on vacation, spending more time in nature, either out in the mountains or by the ocean. And it's a time just to slow down. Little did I know how much we would be slowing down this spring. That wasn't really the thought when I started this show, but I guess I better be careful what I wish for. So the idea for the show was kind of broken into 2 parts. One was just sort of straight up beach scenes just to show the happiness of time spent by the ocean. And I apologize, I didn't send the photographs to Mina in particularly good order. So we're going to do 1 figure, then 2 beach scenes, then 2 more figures. But so one part was just beach scenes, landscapes, and the other part was these figures. I was trying to explore my connection with the sea through images of figures partially submerged in the water. So this first painting, which is actually of me, I took a little bit of artistic license and got rid of some of the wrinkles. It's called Afloat with Her Dreams. And it's pretty small. It's only 18 by 12 inches. It is an oil painting. And I created it with, I found the image with my underwater camera. So here's this little underwater camera. If you've never used one, they're so much fun. I have photographed myself and all of my family members. They're very obliging. And the bloopers were really fun and funny. Just a fun family experience. And also, underwater photographs are really interesting to me because the water itself does bizarre distortions of things and creates some happy accidents that I wasn't expecting and are really fun to work with. So the idea for this series, the underwater series with figures, was sort of to explore ideas, to explore themes of identity and social pressures. So not to get too heavy on you here, but what I'm trying to do is use the surface of the water as an analogy for our external existence in modern society. So, you know, I see modern society as being very fast-paced, it's high-tech, and I feel sometimes that we're constantly inundated with the latest news, especially now with coronavirus. The news is just nonstop, and social media and our obligations and the latest trends that we should be following. And while all of that is really fun and it's stimulating and it's interesting, it can also be kind of overwhelming. So, it kind of overwhelming in a way that makes me feel less in touch with my inner self, and also less in touch with what is real. And I guess by real, I mean in touch with family and with friends, one-on-one, face-to-face, as opposed to on, you know, Facebook, and maybe a little bit less connected to nature and the environment, which is really important to me. So these paintings were kind of born out of a desire to find peace and serenity in a busy world. So again, I'm using the surface of the water as kind of an analogy for our external existence. And then you'll see later on some paintings below the surface. And that to me represents more sort of a more intimate view of ourselves, our truer selves. And being underwater to me feels like it sort of silences all that noise, all that societal noise. And I think because I grew up near the water, I just love swimming. I always have since I was a child. So being in the ocean just reminds me, sort of brings me back to my childhood and my origins. And it just makes me feel calm, that being immersed in nature. So that's where these paintings came from. So that's the first one. Now this one is called Conversations. It's a bigger painting. It's 22 by 32 inches. It's pretty much epitomizes what I'm dreaming about right now. Like just carefree, being on the beach, no masks on, no gloves, having conversations with each other and just walking on the beach and in the sunlight. Probably won't happen this summer, but you know, this painting is sort of, you know, what I'm dreaming about right now. And it's called Conversations because everyone feels like they're, you know, having these conversations, even though they're outside the painting. And I love the dog is having a conversation with the Frisbee, wondering why someone won't throw that for him.
I love how you captured that glassiness and reflection of like that little bit of water that comes up after, you know, the wave hits the shoreline. I mean, it almost looks like you can touch that and get your fingertips wet, you know?
Thank you. I love that time of day. Yeah, so here's another painting. This one's called Beach Read. And again, this painting to me just says like, hello, summer. What could be better than lying on the beach with a good book, maybe eating some junk food that we don't normally eat, and just basking in the sun and smelling that tropical sunblock. That's what this painting's about. And this painting and the painting before, I've worked from photographs, so I really couldn't work from life. People are moving too much with these bigger paintings. And this one's also fairly big. It's 30 inches by 38. But they're from York Harbor, Maine. So I am lucky I go to two places in the summer, one Massachusetts, where my family's from, and then York Harbor, where my husband's family is from. So this is just a happy image for me. All right, so this next one, we're now returning back to these kind of crazy underwater paintings. This is actually a painting of my daughter. It's called Solitude. And these are a little bit smaller, 22 by 14 inches. The name for it was always solitude, but I started this painting before the virus, and I think the word solitude has really taken on new meaning for me since the virus. Uh, I think for many of us, solitude now has kind of a negative connotation. It feels like isolation, too much isolation. But maybe also we're learning that solitude can have some more positive connotations, that maybe this has been a time when we've learned to take care of ourselves more than we normally do, not to rush so much. Maybe we're nurturing more of our creative selves than we normally have time for. And even sort of evaluating, I mean, this is getting a little woo-woo, but evaluating the path that we're on, who we really want to be, spending a little more time thinking about where we want to put our energy. We always are just so rushing to keep up. And I at least have enjoyed this time to kind of really meditate on where I want to spend my energy. So yeah, this is my daughter, Kara, underwater. She is a very patient model. Even when she gets water up her nose, we've had so much fun. So this is, yeah. And this last one is actually of me, my big, long, skinny neck. This painting is called The Ocean Remembers Us. And again, it's not too big. It's 25 by 14. And it's kind of an odd title, I know, but for me, I think we can all agree there's certain places on this planet that have special meaning for us. And for me, the ocean is one of those places that has sort of a visceral feeling for me. And these places that have meaning to us, maybe it links back to our childhood or a place that has a lot of family history. And for me, the ocean is that, and in particular, the ocean at Cuttyhunk Island, which is a small island off of Cape Cod in Massachusetts that I've gone to every year since I was born. And I guess that, the ocean is really part of my identity. And so that's why these paintings are about identity. It feels like it's part of my DNA practically. It is a large part of what I paint about. It's part of my artistic vocabulary. But the title is kind of odd, I know. I feel like the image reminds me of a fingerprint. And as such, I guess when I go back to these familiar places, they feel like part of me. And so I kind of flipped it and was like, I wonder if the ocean feels we're part of it. Like we have our own unique fingerprint, and the ocean recognizes us and welcomes us back every year. So that's what this painting is about.
Great. Liz, any questions for Phoebe?
No questions in the chat right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a question. Phoebe, you have a kind of a unified color, like the beige. Do you do an underpainting?
I often do an underpainting, Catherine, yes. A lot of time, for whatever reason, my eyes see very cool. I tend to paint a lot of blues. Maybe it's because I'm a New England girl, I don't know. So I will often do a warmer underpainting, and that is usually a terra rosa and some kind of muck that I have. Like I tend, when I save my terps, my mineral spirits, I pour them into a mason jar, and the color settles to the bottom, and it's every color I've been painting with. It kind of is this gray muck. So I use some terra rosa and some gray muck to coat my panel first, and then I paint on top of that. It's kind of a warm, earthy color.
Awesome.
We have we just got a question on Facebook. Cynthia would like to know, what medium do you use and how long does it take you to finish a painting?
Well, I'm an oil painter primarily. I do some collage and some gouache paintings, but these are all oil. And the medium, I don't use much medium, which people don't really like. But I like a more matte appearance to my paintings. And I feel when I use a lot of medium to make my paint strokes longer, the paintings get really glossy, and then I feel like I can't see into them. I just like the matte look. So I'm just using paint and mineral spirits, and that's all I paint with. Every once in a while, if I'm painting water, I will use some linseed oil to make a smoother stroke, but pretty much it's just paint.
Oh, two more questions. Again, how long does it take you to finish a painting? And then Donna wants to know what you mean by medium, because some people think of that term as like, are you using, oil paints, this kind of paint, that kind of
Yes.
canvas, but you were using it as a glossy.
Okay, so I'll try to explain that a little bit more clearly. I was a little confused by the question myself because I get confused over the word medium too. So
Right.
in general, my medium is oil paint, but there are also paint thinners that are also called medium that help extend a paint stroke a little bit longer. And a lot of people really love those. And a lot of my students wonder why I don't use them. And those might be linseed oil or, gosh, I can't think of all the names of them, but basically they thin your paint and allow you to have a longer stroke. So that's what, so I'm an oil painter and I don't really use much medium to thin my paint.
Got it.
And then how long does it take? Gosh, it's kind of like raising children, you know, some have their long teenage moments that you hope will clear up, and some just seem to be a little bit easier. But I would say I typically work on a smaller painting like this one we're looking at for a week or two, and a larger one might be closer to 3 weeks, maybe 4 if it's really complicated. I'm kind of a slow painter, unfortunately.
So I noticed when you sent me the information that these are on cradled birch. And so does that mean that the actual substrate it's on is actually wood?
Yes, this particular painting is on a wood panel and it's cradled, which means it's attached to a 2-inch piece of wood on the outside. So if you look at the painting from the side, you just see birch. It's just clean wood, which allows me not to frame them because the larger paintings are quite expensive to frame. And I found that clients don't really, don't always like the frame I've invested in, and it's just a lot of extra investment for me. So this is one way for me to avoid that and allow the client, if they buy it, to put their own frame on if they want to.
Sure, awesome. So what I noticed in the figure paintings is that you really captured the stillness of being underwater, but the fluidity and movement of water at the same time. So you've got like that stillness and quietness, but that movement happening simultaneously, which is, you know, that can be hard to achieve in a 2-dimensional medium. So
Thank you.
yeah, awesome. Great. So tell us, Phoebe, again, how people can find you.
Oh, I'm kind of a little bit of everywhere. So I do have a website. It's Phoebe Twitchell Peterson .faso.com. It's a new website. I've just been putting it together. I'm very excited about that. I'm also on Instagram under Phoebe Twitchell Peterson _art. And the same with Facebook, Phoebe Twitchell Peterson _art.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for putting this on. I mean, I really appreciate it.
Sure, of course, my pleasure. Okay, so now we're going to pretend like we're walking from Phoebe's studio in her building across campus, or maybe down one of the walkways, and we encounter something else that might be happening on Second Saturday. And so Liz is going to take it away here for us for just a moment.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Liz Colandini, and I am the Performing Arts Coordinator here at Workhouse. And I wanted to share with you guys just a quick, like, 3-minute song. So Mina was telling me that today's sort of art walk experience is sort of about healing, and we're also talking about Mother's Day since it's tomorrow. And I actually have a song that is really special to me and kind of dives into both of those worlds of healing and of mothers and grown-ups and parents. It's called After All of This and Everything. It's from the musical Freaky Friday, and in it the character is singing to her little brother about how when he's older he's going to understand, finally understand, that grown-ups mean well and that you will heal as a person and you won't be so confused and lost. So I hope you enjoy. All right. Listen to me, little sleeping monster. You there with the sugar crusted face. I understand he urged to run away, kid, but stay a while and you might like the place. Someday you'll be 16 and awkward and too old for the puppets, but still odd. And you may feel alone or even angry, like life's a joke and grown-ups are a fraud. But kid, I swear to God that after all this and everything, I can tell you it's not true. After all of this and everything, I promise you'll get through. And Mom and Mike, you'll cut some slack, 'cause both of them have got your back. Whatever crap may come our way. After all this and everything, kid, we'll be okay. And you may feel like mommy doesn't love you. And you just feel just angry every day. And mad as hell at Dad because he left you. And angry at yourself, you feel that way. But listen when I say that after all of this and everything, I can tell you what I know. After all of your own everything, you'll learn to let it go. I know this family will get through. And after all of this and everything, Fletcher, I love you.
Liz, that was awesome.
Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you. So yeah, on a regular second Saturday when we're all on campus, you might walk from one building to the next and there could be some sort of performance happening or dance or drumming, or like I said earlier, there could be a show happening later after the second Saturday's over. And so we just wanted to give you a little taste of what you might really experience. Okay. So next up we have Ann Liddle, I hope I said her last name right, who's a fiber artist. Let's see, I know I saw her come on.
There, I'm unmuted now.
There we go, awesome. And did I say your last name correctly?
Yes, yes, just
Okay.
Little.
Awesome, so Ann, tell us a little bit about yourself and then we'll pull you up.
I'm a fiber artist. I'm in building 6, 608A. I'm an original member of the workhouse. I started back in, when was it, 2008. And I now have my own studio. I was a member of the Fiber Art Co-op for a long time. And I'm sitting here in my home studio, as you can probably see in the background. I do a lot of different kinds of fiber art. I do sculptures, I do wall pieces. If you come to my studio, you'll see a variety of things. But really what I'm focusing on at the workhouse is clothing and accessories, the non-messy parts of what I do, because I also do the painting of things and paper mache, and that's just too messy for me to bring into the workhouse. So I do clothing. So that's what I have tonight, some clothing and accessories.
Okay, so that's there.
Okay. Okay, I decided for my featured artist show, which was to be this month as well, that I would do linen clothing and use other pieces of cloth to accent that, and then to make coordinating necklaces. And I also have some earrings, but they aren't showing up here. This is a navy blue check linen, and I use batik for the facing, and I make the necklaces out of paper beads and some paper mache. There are also some commercial beads in there, but primarily paper beads. You can give me the next one. This is a tunic. It's also linen. I hand painted the black and white accents and also made the necklace. Like I said, I'm making a paper. I'm actually wearing that necklace today. If you can't really see me much in it, but I decided to wear it for this event.
Now, when you say you hand painted the black and white accents, that's these pieces here?
Yes. I just take a piece of cotton and I have a textile paints.
Okay.
And I hand paint them, and then I can set it, and then I have it to use for accents or for facings or different things like that. So, and I did a series of silk paintings for my last featured artist show last year, where I took silk and then hand painted with textile paints on the silk. So.
Okay, and so that's
that part I do at home.
That's different from batik, where like you're painting wax and then you dye it and then melt the wax.
Right, and the batik that was in the first one is a commercial batik. I did not make that batik.
Okay.
But that's batik is wax resist, and then you dye it and remove wax and dye it again, or add wax and dye it again. And it's a fairly complex process. Yeah.
Okay.
This also is a linen jacket, and again I hand painted the trim, and I made a complementary necklace where I try to use colors that I've used in the garment, and then some complementary colors. In this case, I have a sort of a teal jacket. It's a little bit darker than it looks on the screen here, but I also use some sort of purplish and a blue as pockets, and then on the back, I don't have a picture of that, is a design with those colors, so you can see the color on both sides.
And so the necklaces, the jewelry here, said that's paper and paper mache, and so like, do you create like a paper bead?
Yes.
Sorts, and then you string them together.
Yes, I make these are bigger paper beads. I was making little skinny ones like you see around the edges, but I decided to make some fatter ones. So I use a heavier paper and roll it on a thicker core, but I make a long triangle out of the paper and roll it up. That's why I get that tapered shape on either side, and then paint them. And finish them with a gloss or another kind of artist medium. We talked about mediums earlier, but these are acrylic painting. I use acrylic paints.
And is there a certain type of paper that you have to use for this?
No, anything. I just use drawing paper, from an artist sketchbook or something like that, or you can use, like in this one here, I use some regular paper, but then I use some newspaper over it to make it the black and white look. And I also have that in the necklace that I'm wearing as well, to give it a little different effect. And then there's some commercial beads that I use as well. Okay. This is a sleeveless top. It's a size small. I hardly ever make a size small. But I'm trying to accommodate some people that say I never make a size small. And again, I used a sort of it's more magenta than it looks here. It looks a little orange here, but it's really kind of a magenta. And it's blue appliques. And on the other side, it's reversible. Most of the things I make, you can wear front to back or back to front, so that you have a different look. And they tend to be looser garments, so that's easy to do. They aren't shaped, but this one, I think actually you have to wear one way because of the nature of the sleeveless garment. But I have other appliques on the back, and then again paper beads, picking up some of the colors and adding some complementary colors.
Gotcha. And so the blue patches are the appliques?
Yes. Yeah. And that's also linen.
Okay. And are they actually sewn on, or are they? Okay.
They're sewn on. They're sewn by machine. I tend to sew mostly by machine. Some of my other artwork, my wall pieces and other things, I do a lot of hand stitching, but in garments, I tend to mostly sew with machine.
Okay.
Now, this is a necklace I made for our cherry blossom festival that didn't happen. Our cherry blossom exhibit that didn't happen, and it's called Cherry Blossom Noir, because I've incorporated not only the pink and green, but some black beads as well, as you can see. So it's a long necklace, and I doubled it up here for the photograph, so you can wear it. But it is a little bit funky and fun, I think. So I was hoping somebody would like it. Maybe when we open, it'll be there. So I guess that's it. I like I say, I hope you come to my studio. You'll see the varying kinds of things I do. Like I said, I do other fiber art as well. And I can be found email annlittlestudio@gmail.com.
Great. And Liz, any questions for Ann?
I don't see any questions at the moment.
Okay. I have a question.
Okay.
So these were all linen garments. So are different fabrics easier or harder to work with when you're creating things like this? And
Oh yes.
Okay.
Oh yes. Linen is easy to work with. It's not slippery. It keeps a crease. It presses well. You know, it's easy to cut out. It doesn't slide around. Like I said, I made a series of silk garments last year for my featured artist show where I stretched the fabric and hand painted them and then sewed them. And silk, thank goodness wasn't the most slippery silk, but silk is slippery. So it's a different thing. It's a little harder to work with. I mean, it's beautiful. It's gorgeous. You can't, nothing wrong with silk. But yes, wool is probably the best thing to work with. But no, you don't want to make it right now.
Right. Great. Well, thank you so much,
Okay.
Ann. That was
Welcome.
wonderful.
Thank you for having us.
Sure. Okay, and our last piece that we have here, we had Christy, Joan, and Erica, ceramic artists at the Workhouse. They put together a tour of the micro galleries, a small-scale sculpture invitational. And so we're going to play that video here. And then we've got some images from some of the artwork that's featured in the show. And so I have to say, when I heard the term micro gallery, what I thought that meant was that it's just a smaller size gallery. And you guys are going to see what it really means, because I was kind of blown away when I saw it. I was like, oh, okay, it's micro. So let's take a look at that. Okay. Here we go.
I'm Joan Ulrich. Christy Boltersdorf and Erica Radke are colleagues of mine, and we co-curated this invitational sculpture show that we're going to show you. I'm here in the ceramics building, and more specifically, I'm in the ceramics classroom because that's where the show is.
While these works are on a small scale, they're not just simply miniatures, they are fully realized sculptures.
These pieces of Ryan Rackshand, I mean, he is a bit of a glaze master. He's been doing flow tests for years, and ultimately he props the body of the sculpture up on a refractory in the kiln, mounts and positions his dried glaze on top, calibrating so when it flows, they become the leg supports. So the legs on these sculptures are just glaze drips.
This is one of our 5 miniature galleries, and one of our artists is here, made the Paraseller, Iris Rodriguez. Her work often explores the theme of femininity.
This is Kristen Norris's piece. She's very interested in lichens and fungi, botanical things. This particular piece is done in clay, although she normally works in paper clay and a little bit of underglaze. Here's another one of our galleries, and we're lucky to have this piece by John Macmillan. We have 3 of his works. He's professor of art and art history down at University of Mary Washington, and these are coil built, amazingly enough. Here's a few little wood-fired face jugs, Stephen Lally. So there's a lot going on in this little gallery, but I wanted to show you Marcel Diolazzo's foot. He's really known for his illustration, but this piece is simple but not. You know, the only glaze on it, of course, is the toenails, and he makes them with this void. He puts air plants in them. So a little functional art. We're lucky to have 5 or 6 pieces by Jamie Fine in our exhibit. She lives in DC. She makes these stoneware, really delicate biomorphic forms. Jamie was a student of ceramic master Ruth Duckworth, so I'm always watching what she's up to. We're posting a link to a video of Jamie Fine working on some of her pieces. It'll be posted below in this YouTube link, so check it out.
Okay, so let's get here. So the thing about this that was really striking for me was when this video, first of all, thank you, Christy, Erica, and Joan for putting that together. It was really well done. And so that first opening scene, I thought that was a room, not a cubby on a shelf. And I'm curious if anybody else had that same impression until somebody put their hand in there and picked up the piece. I had no idea how small these pieces really were. And then I was immediately fascinated by the fact that they're so small. And that in a format like this, you know, through video and not being live, it's really hard to tell the size of whether it's a ceramics piece or whether it's a painting or whether it's a bead. It's really hard to tell the size of things. And so it's that whole live experience is necessary. And while, you know, we're trying to do what we can here virtually, there's just nothing that can replace it. So anyway, those were my thoughts on that when I first started watching that video. And then we've got some of the artist's work here. And so this piece is from Marcel Diolazzo, and he couldn't be with us tonight, but he sent me a little statement he had about it, where he says, I use the small format sculptures as a creative release from wheel-thrown objects and decoration. Love the small format as I can always tweak one piece and develop the one object into an eventual installation of work. Humor plays a big part of these pieces, and the variation of the pieces depend on the clay or firing technique, in this case, raku. And so that's from Marcel Diolazzo. And then this next piece is from Brian Grow. I'm not sure if Brian is on here with us, and if he would like to say.
Yes.
Awesome.
Hey, Brian.
Hey, how you want me to say something? I work a lot. I mean, I guess I wear several different hats. I'm wearing a hat now too. Anyway, I throw a lot, I sculpt a lot, and I'm just a moody little guy. So a lot of times these smaller sculptures become more like maquettes for larger work. A lot of times, the easy way to work out a series of pieces, focus mostly on positive, negative space a lot. So this little guy is the one that's up there now. Is just a fantastic little complete sculpture. It definitely fits that idea that these pieces aren't just small; they're complete sculptures in and of themselves. And it's probably one of my favorite pieces I made in quite some time, and it hangs around the studio. It hangs around my house. It sort of carry it around with me quite a bit. It's got a lot of interesting negative shape to it, and this gesture of this sort of bird figure sort of thing is just I don't know. It's got a lot to it. It's complicated in my mind, so it keeps me thinking. So that's where that piece is at. Anyway.
Thank you.
Yep.
And then this next one is by Stephen Lally. Is Stephen on here?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, so these are wood-fired stoneware, and I was making larger face jugs. Started making them a few years ago, and then the little guys started creeping up, and I don't know. I have a lot of fun with them, and they all have their sort of different attitude, and I sort of enjoy making them. Some of them are a little rude, some of them are not. Some of them a little confused, like we all are. My daughter insists they all have names, so she actually provides the name for them all. It tells me always that I can anyone who gets them can take the name or rename it, but you can't, Dad. So anyway, you can see the effect of the flame and the ash on that. The one on the left, as people look at, in particular, was right next to the firebox and really shows it.
And so remind us how big these are again.
These are about 1.5 inches, 2 inches. And yeah, the eyes are porcelain. The teeth, for the ones with the teeth there, are actually small bits of cone. The cones are what measures the temperature in the kiln. And they're fired 24 hours through 2 cords of wood in a wood kiln, 2-chamber kiln.
Awesome. Great. Thank you so much for sharing.
Sure.
Okay, and then we have this piece by John Macmillan. Is John on with us by chance? Maybe not. Okay. And then this last piece by Ryan Rokshin. I think I'm saying that right. Is Ryan on with us?
I'm here. Hello.
Yeah, tell us more about this. And I'm really interested in how this glaze works and doesn't just kind of pool and spread out all over whatever base it's on, and how it actually forms these legs.
Yeah, so this work is kind of equally about the technical aspect of things, as well as kind of pursuing a particular thing that I want to express. But as far as the technical aspect of these goes, I'm balancing a ceramic form on top of like a piece of kiln brick in the kiln. And then I've spread powdered alumina hydrate on the shelf underneath of the piece. And then after the piece is balanced on top of that piece of hard brick, I take glaze, which we would normally think of in ceramics as like a slurry. Like when we're dipping a pot in glaze, we're thinking of it in like a bucket, or we're painting it on. But I mix my glaze with a lot less water, so I can actually sculpt it, and I make these like little Tootsie Rolls with glaze, and then sculpt them on the piece. And then as the kiln fires, the glaze melts down and hits the kiln shell where there's a little bit of alumina hydrate, so it pops off nice and easy. And I'd say I have like maybe a 20 to 25% success rate with these, because if the glaze melts the wrong way, either you've got a puddle on the floor of the kiln, or it hits the refractory that you're balancing the piece on top of, or it doesn't melt far enough, and then it only has 2 legs, so it doesn't stand up very well. And working even smaller has been like substantially harder than working large with these. When I'm making these and they weigh like 35 pounds, they're surprisingly easy. But this one on the screen is maybe like 3 inches tall, and that was like super hard. This is probably, that piece probably got fired about 12 or 13 times before it was finished.
Oh, wow. So like you would fire it once and then it wasn't quite right, and then you'd do something and put it back in?
Yeah, either if it melted too much, you can snap the legs off and then add more glaze, or if it doesn't melt enough, you can just put it back in and try and fire it maybe 5 or 10 degrees hotter. They're pretty labor intensive as far as loading into the kiln goes.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. I was just drawn to like how the glaze just like dripped down and created the legs. It's really cool. And you say you do them bigger as well, right?
Yeah, most of them are actually done bigger. You can find ryanrockshon.com, and then if you click the portfolio link, you'll see most of my pieces are about the size of my cat. So yeah, a lot larger.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing about that. And again, for everybody, we will have we have a web page set up that'll have all the artists on there, their contact information, different social media. I just realized that we've been on live on Facebook the entire time, so I can actually pull that full video and post that. So there was like kind of a little backup there. So even though I missed hitting record on Zoom initially, so we will still have a full video. And thank you everybody for joining us. Thank you to all of the artists for sending me your work and for being here to tell us about everything. And does anybody have any questions? Liz, are there any questions for any of the ceramic artists?
Not for the ceramic artists yet. We did have a question that we got like as we were transitioning for Ann. If Ann wants to come back unmuted.
I'm here.
Hey Ann. So Melanie would like to know on Facebook. She wants to know, how long do your necklaces take you to make?
Oh, like everything else, who knows? It just varies. I try to make a bunch of beads and then I string them and I play with them. It's impossible to say. I mean, they take longer probably than you think they should.
Great. Any other questions, Liz?
I don't see any, but if anybody wants to pop off of mute and ask a question.
Yeah.
Well, hey, Mina, I'd like to thank everybody for coming tonight and sharing their artwork, the artist, and everybody's participating in discussion about their artwork. Yeah. I think that these are getting more fun every week. As we know, everybody's on a learning curve. And I think this is a great challenge, and we're problem solvers. So when it comes to all these virtual tours of our artwork, I just see things getting better and better as we go along. So thanks for helping out with that process.
Of course.
And stay tuned for even more content as we go through the next several weeks and months.
Yeah.
Thank you. It was fun.
Yeah. You're welcome. And so, yeah, aside from our Virtual Second Saturday, we have virtual exhibitions. We have 4 ceramic exhibitions up on our website. And I'm going to add the micro gallery one now to that, because that was part of the ceramics thing, right, Dale?
Yeah, well, we have Resisters, which is the all women in clay from Virginia invitational exhibit in the Vulcan Gallery. And then we have Reshaping Space up in McGuire Woods Gallery of W16. We have the resident artist, ceramic resident artist work. The exhibit's called Reform. That's in W8. So I think we might do some more video of that.
Great.
Try to get that up for one of these virtual second Saturdays. And these exhibits are up through August. So depending on how things pan out, we may be able to physically see some of this work. Yeah. But we also have 2 visiting artists exhibits, Josh DeWeese from Montana, and then Chris Gustin from Connecticut or Massachusetts. So yeah, it's we'll just keep trying to provide more visuals for everybody. And the inspiring thing is just hearing all the great discussions that are going on from the artists themselves about their work. It's great to learn about all their artwork.
Yeah. And next week we will have our first fully virtual exhibition, Fiber National, up on our website, and that'll be announced. We've also had our performing arts program every other Friday with a virtual cabaret. And all of these things can be found on our website. From the homepage, there should be a link that takes you to all of our virtual offerings. And then we have classes online now as well in a variety of formats, live streaming and recorded, with more being added all the time. So thank you everyone for joining us. Check out all of the virtual stuff. Thank you to all the artists. And that's it, you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liz.